Herb Caldwell has over 25 years of experience as a professional and administrator in higher education, including stints at McMurray College, the University of Illinois, and St. Louis University. Currently, he serves as Chief of Compliance and Engagement at Logan University in Chesterfield, Missouri. He is also the lead consultant for BOMM Solutions LLC, a consulting and multimedia firm, and has spent the past 15 years working with various small businesses, ministries, government agencies, and nonprofits with tailored strategies for organizational effectiveness and efficiency. Competing as a member of men's basketball, Caldwell earned an undergraduate degree from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He also has earned a doctorate in higher education leadership from Missouri Baptist University, MA in community administration, and completed PhD coursework in educational policy studies at the University of Illinois. A creative, Herb is proprietor of All In Music and Media, where the focus is on positive media for faith, family, and community. Dr. Caldwell is passionate about helping others share their own stories via the power of video and recently completed a documentary film focused on reducing health disparity as related to elders with Alzheimer's and other dementias. Welcome to the Goddesses of Social Work podcast, Dr. Herbert Caldwell.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yay. I love reading your bio, and one of my favorite parts was the middle part about you being competing as a member of men's basketball. And I was a sports mama. Now, my boys did not play basketball through high school, but they did start their sports career in in little league basketball, where you go to the churches. I forget, upward basketball, upward basketball, and I love what sports did for their lives. And I was curious, what could you tell us the importance of sports and what it did for you?
So, sports for me, and what's interesting is because ultimately I ended up playing, major college basketball. Right now, I tell people often, and it paid for my undergraduate experience. Right, I started at community college, and then I ended up at a school that, for the years that I was there, both years were ranked in the top 25 in the country. Right, and so not everyone gets that opportunity. But I often tell people it's not that I was so good or great at basketball. I just really wasn't very good at all the other sports, right? Most people play Pop Warner football, Little League baseball. I've never been on any other team other than a basketball team. And so I think what I learned a lot about basketball that has even continued to this day and to this point is basketball, organized basketball is based on positions, right? And it literally is a team. So if you really want to win, if you really want to have success, then you have to understand roles, right? And there usually is a role you specialize in, but then you also need to have adaptability. You got to be able to know what your role is, but also understand what other folks' roles are, right? You have to understand both being the leader and the follower. Um, Again, the agility about it, the maturity about it, the self-sacrifice in it, the commitment. I'm not sure I've ever been asked this question before. You see, I'm going off here, right? The consistency that you need because you're all looking towards hopefully a common and a shared goal. And when it works well, it is beautiful. And when not, it's a disaster. If you want to play by yourself, you should have been a golfer. You should have played tennis, right? But I am a team guy, and so basketball has worked out in all facets of my life, even in just being a man, right? And so yeah, I guess it's contributed more than I realized. So thanks for asking.
I love that. And you know what I was thinking? I just finished reading Inner Excellence. Um, I like I said, I love sports, and AJ Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles, he was reading it on the sideline, and so of course I had to read it. And the guy who wrote it, he talks about golfers, and I bet he would even beg to differ with you that golfing is even a team sport as well because so many other people are involved with getting them to the top of their position as well, even though it looks very solo.
Who's actually out there competing?
That's true.
Right? So just like they have trainers and they have dietitians, basketball, we have all that as well,
Mm,
tutors or what have you. But at the end of the day, and you have a coach, but who has to go out and execute? That golfer is
yeah,
out there by himself. That tennis
yeah,
player is out there by himself. That basketball player has four others that he's out there with that he's depending on to execute. But we can talk about
absolutely.
he and I can discuss that on a different podcast.
Yes, he probably does have a podcast, and I suggest everybody get that book. I've read it. I've had my clients read it. Inner Excellence. It was really good. He probably actually does have a podcast. But what I pulled from that, because I had to write it down because it was really good. So even though it was the first time you've been asked that question, you did a really good job. So what I
But you know
heard you
what though?
say,
Now I'm thinking I don't disagree with this person though, right?
mm-hmm,
Because ultimately their success is dependent upon a team, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's not the same team that I have in sports, but I think the takeaway though is that you know your personal success is not just yours. It's never yours
That's it.
alone.
That's it. Yeah,
Your
that's
brilliance
actually
is always interconnected, dependent upon someone else's. So I think that's
absolutely.
the greater takeaway.
I think that's what he's trying to tell us. Yes, it's a great book. It's a really great book. But what I got from you and your great answer, Herb, was you got to be an expert in your role. You got to have some expertise in the role that you are executing. You got to have some adaptability, some leadership skills, and know how to be a follower as well. And that's what sports does for you.
Let me share something with you.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from community college, junior college, I was a star, a near All-American. When I got to the University of Illinois, everyone was All-Staters and All-Americans, right? So my role at one point was just to be a leader and a preparer, right? And so I remember this one game in particular. You reminded me of this as we're talking. And one of our star players was having an off game. Now I was the cheerleader. I would drive these guys hard in practice because I wanted them at least if I wasn't going to play or play just a little amount, I at least wanted these guys prepared when the game time came around. So this star player of ours was having a tough game, and I wasn't as vocal this game cheering from the bench because I was thinking about my own self. I think I deserve more minutes. Coach ought to play me a little. I've earned a little more minutes to be able to play, and so I wasn't cheering as loud as I normally would have been cheering. And the coach calls a timeout, and the player avoids our Hall of Fame coach, and he comes straight to the bench, and he says, "Yo, Herb, where are you? I can't feel you." And I'm like, man, you're the one out there missing all those easy shots. What this got to do with me? But because I wasn't occupying my space within that role, it impacted others from doing their role. So yes, I think we have to have expertise in whatever our roles are while still understanding and knowing how it may impact others within the chain. So
I love that answer. And I'm going to talk about my son just for a little bit. He was the pitcher and usually the closing pitcher of the team. And he just wanted to that's 9 innings. And he's having to sit on the bench for 8 innings up until that ninth inning. And so his role, because I'm a cheerleader, that's what I do. His role was to cheer for those guys. And they would come up to him and be like, Corey, where are you at? But he would be so mad that he went out there that we really had to work with him being present for all 8 innings,
yeah,
whether he was playing the game or not.
yeah,
Absolutely. And one of the things that you just reminded me of, because I love Oprah and Gail, is Gail was always Oprah's biggest cheerleader. And now that Oprah is, she's still definitely in the foreground, but Gail's on CBS Morning News and all of that, and but she cheered her best friend on for all these years, like unselfishly cheered
yeah,
her on. And to me, that was just like your timing will always be God's perfect timing for you.
yeah.
So making sure you play your role in the season that you are in and be really,
Right.
really, really good at it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. All right. So again, I told you I loved reading your bio. And you went to 50,011 colleges.
Yeah.
You're working at colleges right now and universities. But before you became Dr. Herbert Caldwell, who have you been and how did you get here?
You know, childhood and how you're raised really can impact you for a long time. So it's really important how we treat not just our children, but those who are around you as you're coming up because of the impact. I may not be remember something happened yesterday, but I can tell you in great detail how Miss Johnson made me feel, right? How Mr. Johnson, made me feel when he spoke to me every day. So certainly my household, my upbringing has a lot to do, with who I am, right? God gives us certain gifts, and then he puts us in certain positions that seemingly hammer some things into us, right? And hammer some things, out of us. And so, who am I? Oh, geez, that's how much time we got? Um, but I've shown up in various ways, right? Always a student. There's always something to learn. And the older I've gotten and the more information I've collected and the more, I guess, the more accomplished others may say that I am, is the more I realize I don't know very much at all. Right? And so there's always this process of, growing. I've learned something since being on this podcast already, right? So there's always moments. So I've always been a learner, um, uh, blessed literally with the gift of music, right? An ability to play instruments, even though I may not have formal training, with them. And I'm not going to say, on the level of Prince or anything like that with him and his 27 instruments, but there's not much that I can hear on the radio and not reproduce, right? So I've always had that gift. We talked about the sports thing in basketball a little bit. Spent time in social services, volunteering. Have spent time in a formal ministry, right? Have spent time as in education administration, time teaching. Um, but ultimately, and I've not always been able to articulate this, um, but I know that my life's purpose, that God put me on the earth to help people more effectively and efficiently transition from point A to point B. And so, again, I've not always been able to articulate that, but that's what my life has been about. We see that formally with ministry, right? It's a little easier to see help people get from one point in life to, but think about music. Music does the same thing. It moves people to a space and a place. So my musicianship transitions people from one thing to the other. Even when I was working in college recruitment, right? Education as a tool to help people get from point A to point B. You're doing training, you're doing consulting, you're opening a business or organization, get from point A to point B. And so I don't get caught up on so much anymore whether I have to describe myself as a researcher, right, a musician, because it sounds like, man, pick a side, make up your mind. No, I'm all this. This is who, I am. And I know we're going to talk about, the current project that I have, but for the first time, this has felt like something that has brought all those pieces of me together in a meaningful way because it has the social and a community, it has the family piece, it has the spiritual piece, right? It has the music, it has the research, it has the education. So it's like my life has been building, and I don't think this is the only moment, right? But this is a particular moment where I can see all of these things kind of coming together. So that's who I am. I am this person that's been uniquely gifted to help people move from one point to the other.
That is such a beautiful answer. That is such a beautiful answer. And I was thinking, I had two different thoughts. I'm a Gemini, so I do that. But Oprah said her purpose, and I love that you said my purpose in life is to help people transition from efficiently and effectively from point A to point B or point A to point C, whatever that looks like. and you know that that's your purpose, regardless of what an organization, an agency title puts on you, or whatever title you put on yourself. You know, as right now you are the producer of the Mama Joe project, right? So even that's the title, but again, it's getting people efficiently and effectively from one point to the next point that they're wanting to be at. And what a purpose. And when you said that, I remembered Oprah said her purpose in life is to help raise the consciousness through storytelling. I think you have something similar to that in relate to this film, helping others share their own stories via the power of video, right? And
Yeah.
so hers is to help raise the consciousness of the planet. And after you said that, I was thinking about my private practice is Illuminated Expressions, and my whole vision with that is to help people to illuminate their authentic expression. And if you can just know what your purpose is, then it doesn't matter what the titles and the labels of the agencies and organizations that they put in. And then when you're in a place or in a situation, are you living out your purpose? Or are you living out the dream of someone else? So that is beautiful.
No, and one of the big pieces about it for me, and like I said, I've not always been able to articulate it. But when I was able to, I said, "Oh man, I got it," and it shifted me because I don't get caught up in all the malou because I know how I'm supposed to move and kind of what I'm supposed to do. So I don't get caught up in who gets credit for this or credit for that or yeah, and yeah, we got to pay our bills and we got to eat, but just certain things that others may be, or even me, maybe a previous version of me would have been more concerned about. I'm just not as concerned about anymore if I'm operating in my lane, if you will.
I absolutely love that. And you don't get taken off your lane so easily either. When someone has a great idea, if that's not within your purpose, you're like, oh, that's a great idea, but I'm gonna stay in my lane over here.
No, that's an amazing point because you know when you're gifted and when you grew up a certain way in certain environments, and plus we're creative people, right? There's a lot we can do, right? Um, but there's some things that you can do that others can't, right? So that space gets unfilled if you're busy doing all these other things that you can do, but others can do as well. And so I think that's a great point you raise about being more focused about those places where, again, you're uniquely gifted in, because others are going to miss out from experiencing you and what you bring to the table and those gifts you've been you've been given. So, and
That
here's the other
part.
thing: we have to learn how to celebrate others just like I want to be celebrated in my uniquities. Yes, that's a word I'm using today. Uniquity. Yes.
Use it.
Celebrate. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the sports and the roles, right? And so celebrate and understanding that I bring importance and value, but that others do, as well. We'll be, I don't like cliches, but we will be greater together.
Mm-hmm. Especially when we're using our own unique gifts. And you
Yes.
know what else? It diminishes comparativeness, which isn't comparing the thief of joy, right? So if I know that I am standing and walking in my own unique purpose with my own unique gifts, I don't have to worry about comparing myself to someone else. My sister is a musician, as you know, and she plays 8 different instruments. I don't even know how to read music.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
know how to speak, I know how to write. And what we've learned how to do is use her gifts and my gifts and work together and not be like, oh, well, I never wished I played music. But,
Yeah.
that was her
Yeah.
gift. Let me tell you why. Not because I don't think musicians are brilliant, but maybe your siblings feel the same way. Kendra would play the flute for 8 to 12 hours a day when we were growing up. We were in a 4 bedroom house or whatever, but listening to the flute for 8 hours a day.
I don't know. Maybe you should thank your sister because my first instrument coming up was the drums.
Ah,
And so my siblings had to listen to me banging all hours of the day and night because I just love them things. And I literally, and I was a big child, and so I literally beat them things until they were just done. Then I'd grab pots, pans. It didn't matter. I was beating hangers, pencils, just always drumming. So maybe you ought to thank her for that high
I
pitched
do
flute.
thank her. And you know what?
Version.
And she's probably made me smarter because what we know, research says music makes you smarter. So having to listen to an hour upon hour is probably why I'm so smart now. But you know what, in talking about your purpose, one of the things I wrote down and actually had on my brain this morning, so I knew it was going to come up, was it sounds like you are a servant leader. And you can even talk about being a servant leader as we move into what, I'm so excited and had the honor to actually be in the audience of the film, one of the showings of the Mama Joe project. But it sounds like you're a servant leader, and watching you on that stage and the podium um, talking about this particular project, you're serving your community, especially coming onto this podcast. There's some other things we have in works, wanting to get people in rural spaces in Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi involved in this, and that takes a lot of servant leadership in order to get the word out about this particular project.
Yeah, so it's called the Mama Joe Project, right? And it's an initiative to raise awareness um, around health and caregiving for elders, specifically those with Alzheimer's disease and dementia. This is a growing issue, right? That the CDC calls a crisis. It impacts certain communities, right? My own family is impacted, and so wanted to use the creative arts, the power of film and video storytelling to give a face to this, right? Didn't want other families to go through what our family went through, which is taking care of our matriarch, but with a lack of information, resources, and support. The other thing is when I can speak for myself. When I found out my mother had dementia, um, I didn't even know what it meant, right? It was like it might as well have been a bad word to me. And so we're not the only family. Ours is not the only mother. And so one of the things we want to do with this project is also release folks from the stigma and shame that they should not be feeling. Okay, you shouldn't have to take care of it's an honorable task to take care of anyone, right? And so you shouldn't feel like you have to do that in secrecy because you'll be unsupported, because you won't have the information and the help to do so. So that's what this is about. And so there's the documentary film called My Mama Joe Hope and Help, and we show it as part of health outreach, educational outreach, and what we call community engagement forums, which is what you had the opportunity to attend in Atlanta, Georgia, right? So it's a 2-hour event where we use this film that highlights again my family story, but also includes subject matter experts and a variety of efforts so that families can get information, evidence-based best practice and guidance and tips, caregiving, right? Use of insurance options, mental health, something we don't want to talk about sometimes. Again, so that families and individuals can be better positioned for navigating their own journeys. And so since October of 2024, we've been on this journey about once a month now, traveling in various places to have these outreaches so that folks can get the help that they need.
I did not realize it had only been since October 2024. That's less than a year.
Oh yeah,
I'm a social worker, not a mathematician. I was about to
yeah,
do the
yeah,
but less than a year. And I did get to see the one that you showed in Atlanta, Georgia. And the experts, one, it was at the Carter Center. Come on through. Such a
yeah.
beautiful location. And then the experts you had after the showing were dynamic experts. And I also want to say, Dr. Caldwell, that the experts you had in the film were top notch. And so for this to be such, and I learned, when you were speaking after the film was showed, that your beautiful mother passed just a year ago, right?
Right.
Was it just a year? And so for this to be, for you to already have your hands on such expertise, such dynamic panel members, and such beautiful locations, I'm blown away, and I'm like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
How were you able to do that?
So it wasn't with strategy. It wasn't with intent, connections, or know-how. We talked about earlier about walking in our lanes, right? I really felt in my heart what I would say uh, was divine purpose to get this done. So in March
Mm,
of 2023, I started on this path of trying to capture material to tell my mother's story. Um, and I didn't even know what that would completely look like. And and we got a lot of no's,
mm,
a lot of disbelief, right? A lot of what you could one could take at discouragement, right? And then this hasn't been done, right? Where there's
mhm,
been film used in this manner to talk about brain health that features the population most at risk.
mhm,
The data is clear about this. Women make up two-thirds of those diagnosed. Blacks and Latinos, folks in rural areas, low income, you're more at risk for dementia and to have caregiving struggles. So why wouldn't we be talking about strategies and maybe the unique challenges that this population has? So there's not been another project that have taken it from this angle, included the type of folks that you mentioned, and then that has this multi-regional outreach tour. Because and you talk about the schedule. So the film is streaming nationally on the PBS platform. That started late January of this year.
mm,
But my issue was the film was done, completed in November. Well, we actually had kind of like, you have certain, you go through certain revisions of the cuts. We had enough of a cut by October. And so you go back to the servant leader point. Yeah, I understand that PBS wants to start playing it and broadcasting it in February. But if we know this is information that can help people, why would we wait 5 months?
mhm,
So in
mhm.
October, we started showing it as part of community outreach, and we've continued to do so. We've now seen over 1,600 folks at these outreach events, knowing they're getting connected to the information, that they needed. So what I'm saying is, once I became obedient to what I believe was my call, things started happening. And I kept pushing through the no's and got just enough yeses, right? And then you end up filming in what, nearly 20 states, right? Some of the leading scholars and practitioners in the country,
Yeah,
right? On this piece, and you end up in beautiful places like Phoenix, Arizona, like the Carter Center in Atlanta. So it's been some pretty amazing things that have happened, and we're still early in the journey.
very early, very early. One of the things that stood out to me, I got excited. It was like, oh my God. You had three social workers in the film, and they it looked like they were all MSWs. But one of the things when you started talking to us on the podcast about your family's journey with caring for your mother who had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, is you guys had a lack of info, a lack of resources, and a lack of support. That's all social workers do is provide information, provide resources, and provide support. I guess I'm curious, like, how did you even know the importance of getting these social workers involved? One of my favorite one, she had the colorful hair. I think
Yes.
I told you about her. I love when people are able to show up as their authentic self and you allowing her to show up as her authentic
Yeah.
self. But the importance of having social workers, but the importance of us getting this information out to social workers, since that's what we do, is provide information, provide resources, and provide support. And just a little bit about touching on the social work piece.
So once again, I'm not that smart that I have, this brilliant answer of strategy and planning. But let me tell you, my family has been deeply impacted by social workers. And so that you can understand, my mother bore four children, of which
Mm-hmm.
I am the youngest and the only boy. But I spent most of my childhood growing up as the middle child. Through the process of adoption, four sisters all older, four brothers all younger, and there were always a stranger, neighbor, cousin. So who do you think was working with us through these adoption
Yeah,
processes?
yeah.
when my mother at some point became a caseworker, at Big Brother, Big Sister, who do you think she was working with many of the time with placements and things of this nature, helping folks in temporary. So you mentioned social workers are there on the scene. And even when it comes to Alzheimer's and dementia, you cannot get a diagnosis unless it's given by a professional who can do that. But it can be very challenging to get in to see certain specialists, a neurologist. So where does support, help, even affirmation come in within that 6 month period that you may have to guess who's likely to be on the ground at
Mm-hmm.
your house, available in office, a social worker, right? And so it's important that you take a well-rounded approach to getting. So yes, we need the researchers, we need the scholars, we need the neurologists and our primary care physicians, but you also need the caseworkers and the social workers and all the other services that a social worker is going to refer you to, even the informal ones,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have to have that type of wraparound support. Again, I wish I could tell you in our strategy meetings we came up with it, but that's the way that it fell out. And you mentioned Kelly G. Loeb, who's at the University of Kansas Medical School, and she's a social worker to her heart. I met her at an event I was filming at. I wasn't even talking to her, but because she was ear hustling and heard we were talking about, she inserted herself. She'll tell you this. She inserted herself into that conversation, and even after post filming, we're still working with her on events because she's that committed. It's just who she is to help and to give to make someone else better. So no, our project is more complete, Mel, because we have social workers involved. Man, that almost sounds like a plug for a commercial, doesn't it?
We're the goddesses of social work. I want to say that I hope Kelly gets to ear hustle this because I would love to have her on the podcast. One, she was just so full of information. I've been a social worker for 26 years this year, and literally, I've been a social worker for 26 years, and um, I was learning some stuff from her. And
Yeah.
so I knew immediately, I was like, I would love for her to teach the social workers I have a sphere of influence with. And so I would love if she's ear hustling. But also, because I believe, and, you honored me and let me pray before we start the podcast. I believe that those who came before us are with us now, propelling us forward. And the fact that your mother was a social worker, neighborhood, community, family
Yeah.
social worker, adopting, working with social. And the first time I got to meet you, what was the first thing I said? It's nice to meet you. Will you come on my podcast?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I would like to think that Mama Joe has something to do with it
Well,
because
here's what's interesting. And I myself did probably 80% of the filming for the film. Well, that's behind the camera,
mm,
but being in front of the cameras, and so I speak quickly, right? I stutter, so I don't really like doing this. And out of the 15 events that we've had, that's so when you came to the event, I was on the stage. That's because the health editor nearly bullied me into it, right? I'm normally the one kind of standing to the side asking the questions, right? And so you caught me in an environment that I'm not as comfortable being in. But again, we think about what the end goals are, right?
mm-hmm,
And so if you think that it can be of a help in some way, well, I got to get over my personal proclivities, right? Whether sitting on a stage, talking in front of the camera or on the microphone. Maybe there's somebody else who talks fast and stutters and don't want to do it, and they're encouraged by hearing me be a part. So we find ways to do what we got to do to help others out, right?
absolutely. And I
And,
gotta
and and
say,
let me say that
mm-hmm,
was my mother. My mother
mm,
was reluctant about being out front, but when I tell you she fought viciously for those whose voices had been silenced for whatever reason
yeah,
because of her
yeah,
own personal pain and trauma as a child. She didn't want
mm-hmm,
anyone else to feel that way and feel like they weren't being seen or being heard. And so I think you're right. Those are things that I've gleaned from. And you got to push through. And oftentimes it's just some sort of fear, right?
mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
love is greater than fear. And so we got to move forward so that others can be brought out of their shadows.
And what's interesting is that, a lot of people would have stopped when they got their first, second, third no. And here you are pushing past all the no's that you got when you first started this project, but then you are all, so to me that's fearful. That would induce fear, getting those no's. Well, if these people who call themselves experts are saying no, then maybe I'm
Yeah,
not supposed to be doing this thing.
yeah,
And then to hear that you are fearful to do public speaking is like, what, you don't mind getting the no and you'll push past that?
yeah,
And had you not, I felt like, because I didn't know that that wasn't your usual role on stage, but you would have never been able to tell me that. It made it such a more impactful experience hearing from you on that panel. But also, what was so impactful were the audience members' stories.
yes.
I giving them an opportunity to come to the microphone. And I know, especially in the Black community, only 2 minutes,
That's right. That's right.
but they were able to get what they needed to say out within that brief period of time. And so, not just hearing your family story on such a beautiful film project, but then being able to see how it resonated with so many people in the audience. And so I guess I was curious, Dr. Herb, how has hearing the audience members in the 20 states that you guys have been able to this film in, how has that expanded your perspective of this health disparity?
So it's really affirmed and great observation, but it's affirmed um, our our approach to even these outreach events, right? Because for 58 minutes you watched the film, so you've heard about my family story. So once we go to the outreach event, it becomes less about Mama Joe and the Caldwell families, because now you've been um, triggered and you've seen your own experience in it, and it's about getting you help at your door.
Mm,
And so, because everyone has, a story. So even when we were making the film, I did have the thought, well, why are we talking about this about my mama? Everybody has a mama, right? But then I began to hone in on we're using. It's almost like reading a book. Okay, now
mhm,
you're much better well read than I am, right? When I was a kid, I liked the books that had pictures. And so that's what this documentary film is. It's telling the story, but using my family as the pictures. So now it's time to apply it to your house. Okay, thanks, Herb. Thanks for showing us Mama Joe. Now, how is this going to help me? And I think
mhm,
you can attest that hearing the other stories in there does help with another perspective. It also helps reinforce this sense of community. So hey, man, I'm not the only person who's alone in this. I'm not the only one who wanted to smack my brother because he wouldn't send his check, to help or wouldn't come see about mama, right? And so all that, there's so many components that's tied to it, but it's a beautiful thing. And if I can tell you, last weekend we had a showing in St. Louis, packed theater, but we had never had this experience. During the talkback of the film, an older woman asked for the microphone, and as you know, I'm always tight about releasing that mic, but I let her have the mic, and she's looking at the film toward the screen, and she says, "I've been in denial."
mm,
She said, "My family's been trying to tell me, but I wouldn't believe it." And her sister is sitting a couple of seats down from her, and she turns to her sister and says, "Sissy, I think you saved my life,
mm,
and I'm going to go get tested." What? In that moment, in this outreach event, she realizes that she's been exhibiting some signs of dementia. Her family's been trying to get her help, but she hadn't listened. So when she turns to thank her sister for saving her life, half the theater was cheering, the other half was crying, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
what an immediate experience. But how do you think that sister felt
Mm,
now knowing that they could take some steps forward since her sister was accepting? No, her life's not over, but she's been showing some signs that she needs a little extra help. And that's what it's all about. We would have never gotten that if we just talked the whole time about Mama Joe for 2 hours. So there
mm,
has to be this good balance of us just our film just being a starting point. Because even when we leave that city, conversations needs to continue with the providers within that community. We
mhm,
come to Montgomery and we do an event there. At some point, we're going to jump back on a plane and go to the next place. But conversation and interactions and relationships must continue with the families, the providers, the social workers within that community and in the next city. That's how we raise and lift the health, spiritual, mental, physical of our communities by having those connections. And what happens from those storytellings, ma'am, are connections.
Absolutely. How powerful does that happen at the event? And that you get to witness immediately the results of the work that you've been doing, especially, and I'm going to say it, especially as your family is still grieving the loss of your mother.
Yeah. But I got to tell you, my mother lived her life in a way that was always about others. And again, I'm not with cliches, but like she literally would approve of if this is
Hmm.
what it takes to get other people the help they need. That's what she cared about. And so I'm not gonna speak for me, and I think for my siblings too, because many of them actually come to all of these
I
events.
got to meet your sister.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. In fact,
Hmm.
I think several of them were there in Atlanta. Some cousins, were there. And I think there is healing in that for us, knowing that a lot of good is coming out of the work.
And you know, one of the things that I'd like to, again, going back to social workers being the one to provide information, resources, and support, one of the audience members in Atlanta got up and she was just like, "Who do I call? Who do I call?" And literally, one of the Alzheimer's Association representatives came from behind her, tapped her on the shoulder while she's still on the mic
Yeah,
and gave her her card and was like, "Call me." And me.
yeah,
So again, it's that immediate
yeah,
getting the help you need immediately, getting the realizations you need that maybe I do need to go get tested immediately. These aren't things that are, oh, I saw a film and
yeah,
I don't know what to do with it. You are giving a resource book out. I left mine in the car.
yeah,
But you're giving a resource book out. You have the Alzheimer's Association when you can, who are immediately giving resources out. And again, just the film itself is a resource as it's awakening and enlightening
yeah.
people in a way that is immediate.
I think in three ways and we're again, remember, we're talking about 2 hours here.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Mm-hmm.
see something with the film, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the talk back, you hear something, right? And then with the workbook and
Yeah.
whoever our partners are there, usually area agency on aging. This time it was also Dr. Fayron Epson, the Alter, folks from
Mm-hmm.
Alter and Caregiving While Black. But they all are giving out resources, and all these events are free. There's no cost for these. So you've seen something, you've heard something, and you're walking away
Yeah.
with materials in your hand that will continually, help you. So I think it's a power pack 2 hours to be able to help in care, for a family. And we've been hearing these things even in the formal, evaluations. So the question is, ma'am, do you think I want to do less of these events, or do you think I want to do, more? If
Mm-hmm.
people are getting the type of help that they need to get to the next level. I got to tell you, for me, it's been surreal. It really has. But I'll tell you this one story, okay? Because we were in Houston earlier this year, and it wasn't Alzheimer's, but caregiving is caregiving. And so this
Mm-hmm.
person was having a hard time with their loved one. They came to the film, right? Heard the talk back, had the workbook, had the materials, but when they came out, I still could tell they were frustrated, and I could tell they were trying to be kind, and they don't want to say, "Yeah, Herb, Dr. Caldwell, yeah, this is a 2 hour waste of my time," but I could tell they were still a little tense and frustrated. You could see it on them physically. But at this particular event, now we always feed you food. In fact, the event you came to at the Carter Center was the only event out of 15 where we've never had food. So sorry about that, Renita. But every other event we have, at least if we're in a movie theater, a concessions combo. But this particular event, we had a reception afterwards. So I said, "Ma'am, thank you, but please go in there and enjoy yourself. Have a meal." So she comes out about an hour later. She's hugging my neck, right? "Oh, thank you, Dr. Caldwell. Oh, thank you." In that room, just having snacks and a few
Mm-hmm.
beverages, she found community.
Yeah, that's it.
just sitting at a table. So again, the totality of the event, the film itself didn't do it for her. The workbooks itself didn't do it. The talk back didn't do it for her. All the resources didn't do it for her. But just drinking lemonade and sweet tea and eating what do they have? Creole macaroni and cheese. What is that, right?
Mm.
But it was tasty because they ate it
Sounds good.
all right.
Yeah.
But and just having conversations with eating, she found out that she wasn't alone.
Mm.
She wasn't the only one having a hard time with her mother. You exchanged a couple of business cards, a couple of text messages, and IG sites. She found community in there. And the totality of that, all those factors end up doing what we want folks to do
Mhm.
is get support, information. I told you at the
And
beginning,
resources. Yeah.
my job while I'm on this earth is to help people more efficiently and effectively get from point A to point B. And I've seen a variety of ways over these last months how God's allowing me to move in my purpose with this Mama Joe project, and it's humbling. It's incredible, and I'm committed.
We are so grateful for your beautiful mother. And, you know, I honor the social workers who came before me always. And I like to try to do that on the guise of social work. And, you know, I told you before we started, you're my first masculine energy on this show. And really is Mama Joe.
Uh, so I show up in male form and male masculinity, and all you want to still talk about is my mother.
Is
Really,
Mama Joe.
that's
Yes.
what we're doing here today.
I love it. And, you know, thank you. You know, we're getting to our last question. And, thank you for getting out of your comfort zone and coming and saying yes and speaking because it's been an absolute honor. You're doing such amazing work. I'm so grateful. I told you this in the email that I got to see the film and it's streaming nationwide on PBS. We're hoping to get you here in Montgomery so we can have the social workers involved and even the community to be able to have exactly that impactful moment that we were just talking about. But I want to go to your creative side, which is this film, right?
Yeah.
The film, you were able to put that on display. Your research, all the things that you come to the table with, you were able to put it on display with this project. But I like the last part of your bio. You said a creative. Herb is proprietor of All In Music and Media. I'm currently reading The Artist's Way. Yes, I am a reader. I love to read. And I'm reading for the second time The Artist's Way. And one of my favorite lines is that what differentiates is not, I'm badly paraphrasing, but what differentiates one person from another is the audacity to be an artist. And this feels like all the no's that you got, all the experts. This is like you said. This is a trailblazing event. No one else is doing it. You're filling a gap that hadn't been done with it being women, it being women of color, it being rural caretaking gaps are being highlighted. So this is a trailblazing um, work that you are doing. But the artist way talks about the audacity of being an artist, and I guess I wanted to lean into that. Where did the audacity come from for you?
So I think for me, it comes from, what me saying earlier, I felt like this was a divine assignment, right? And so if you feel like God's telling you to do something, does not give you a certain confidence, right? And I grew up in church as a musician, so I only went to lessons for like 2 weeks. So most of
Mm,
what I learned comes from hearing, right? And what I learned from people who are kind of self-taught, you can put the same song in front of us, we might interpret it differently, right? You can drive yourself crazy. You mentioned it earlier about trying to compare yourself to someone else and put a competition on it or what have you. And I certainly could have self doubt. Right, this is only the second full length film that So you certainly could have gotten someone with a larger resume from the creative side and all these doubts. Well, you're not funded and all these types of who's going to pay attention to you, but you have to ask yourself, why not you, right?
Mm.
And then for the other thing is I celebrate all the other great filmmakers that are out there. There are other folks who are even doing great filmmaking within the Alzheimer's dementia space. But that doesn't mean that there's not room for me
Yeah.
because there's only one me. And the way I see things and the way I view things and the way I present things, my voice matters. And
Yes.
so and my voice can matter without saying that Renita doesn't.
Mm.
And so it's about finding your space, within that place, not trying to do more than what I can do. But I'm also not going to dim my light just because you're not wearing sunglasses, right? And so, and that takes some courage,
Hmm.
right? Because one thing about it, and this certainly is part of my creative side, when you're on a stage, everybody thinks the stage is great and it's sexy and all this stuff here, right? But when you're on that stage, not only can people applaud you, but they also might heckle you, boo you, and throw
Mm.
tomatoes,
Hmm.
right? So you put yourself up there, you might get praise, but you also may get criticism. So again, it gets back to thinking about your mission and thinking about, the greater good. Herb, why are you doing this? I'm doing this so that others can learn and glean from. Now, so I want to try to do it with all the excellence that I can. And we had our creative spin to it here and there, right? And we created all the original music for the film and that piece, like that. But again, there's a gap there. There's a need there,
Hmm.
and maybe I'm not the answer, but maybe I have a contribution to that. And so you got to get over yourself and get on that stage because somebody just might like the way you sing.
They sure might. They sure might. And you might, like you said, save a life. You saved her life. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait a minute. So I've not even thought about that because it's been so recent.
Mm.
Yeah. So think if we're not filling that gap, maybe that woman doesn't get reached.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what all family conversation she had, but what I know because I was standing right next to her, she's looking at the film when she realizes I've been in. She says it. There's 120 people in the room who heard her say,
Hmm.
"I was in denial."
Mm.
Right, sissy? I think you saved my life. Isn't that the point of it?
The whole point. The whole point.
You
I
trying to
know
give me
that
the
felt
spot?
like
You
a,
trying to
that
give me
felt
the
like,
spot on your podcast?
that felt like a mic drop right there. That's the whole point. And oftentimes people say if it's just one person, that's it right there. If it's just one person. So thank you so much, Herb, for the work that you're doing. And thank you for saying yes to the Guys of the Social Work podcast. And I just really want to thank Mama Joe. I just really want to thank Mama Joe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's pretty amazing. So I look forward and want to encourage you to continue doing the work you're doing because it's about helping others and ways we can creative and new ways we can find to do that. I think it's just going to have a lasting impact. So thank you for having me and thank you for doing what you're doing and hopefully we'll get a chance to do some things together.
I think we will.